Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Today is the 77th Indian Army Day. Commemorates the day when the first Indian Army chief took office after independence. Now, over 7 decades later, the force faces mounting challenges along its borders, two tense and unresolved boundaries with Pakistan and China. And on Monday, Army Chief General Upendra Dwivedi termed the situation along the LAC as sensitive but stable. Most importantly, he said there were no plans to reduce India's troop deployment along the LAC in eastern Ladakh. He cited the ongoing troop presence on the Chinese side. Joining me on the show tonight are Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, Lieutenant General Rajiv Chaudhary, Colonel Nikhil Apte, and in the studio, I have with me my colleague Nivriti Mohan. Welcome to the News9 Plus show. General Bhatia, break down for us the importance of what the Army Chief just spoke about about the border situation. You know, it's been 5 years since the Army has been deployed along both the LAC and the LOC. The Army Chief said that the troops are going to stay there through winter because of the heavy Chinese troop presence on the other side. What kind of cost does this impose on us in terms of wear and tear and the fact that we have to deploy our troops at super high altitude?
Firstly, I must say that the Indian Army's deployment along the LAC for the last 5 years has been very effective. It's a mirror deployment. It has been proportional and it has been equitable. We have not, we have resorted to our operational philosophy which we had along the LAC as no blinking, no brinkmanship. So based on that, despite the 21st October disengagement which is agreed upon between the two nations and the two armies, we will have to continue to deploy because if you look at China's intent, China's strategic intent is to contain India and resolve the boundary question on favorable terms, right? We should understand that China follows, Xi Jinping follows Mao's philosophies, and Mao's philosophy was to have inclusive land borders.
Right.
He did not inclusive borders, not maritime borders by default or design, I don't know, but land borders. And they have resolved the boundary with 12 of the 14 nations, the two being India and Bhutan. And Bhutan is, the tri-junction has to resolve with Indian consent. So that is where I think we'll have to defend the LAC. And India's strategy for denying meeting the Chinese threat, mitigating the Chinese threat, and the strategic intent has to be a 4D strategy. Defend the line of actual control. That is number one. Without that, you cannot do anything because it's also political warfare which China carries out. And dominate the sea lines of communication because the 8 choke points are the vulnerabilities of the Chinese, strategic vulnerability and strategic. And third is deft diplomacy to bind to balance with nations where we have convergence of interest, like the Quad, Japan, Vietnam, and other nations. And the fourth and the last one is, and again, I see we're not succeeding there also, is denying space in the neighborhood.
Right.
If you see what's happening in Bangladesh or earlier happened in Maldives, Sri Lanka, Nepal for that matter. So we'll have to look at the Chinese, strategic concern, strategic threat as a challenge.
Right.
And we'll have to make sure that they don't succeed. And that is what I think defending the LAC is very important. It's the first time the Chinese PLA after 1979 has gone back. Because the Chinese strategy along the, along the LAC and other areas is firstly claim, then occupy, legalize, and thereafter integrate. So they were the second, they've claimed since 1957, occupied 38,500 kilometers in the eastern Ladakh. And now they came for the forward deployment in 2020 March, occupied the area which they wanted to, but for the first time they've gone back. So that is a strategic resolve which has been demonstrated by the Indian Army, which has defended the LAC. So I think it's been a very, and we need to continue, despite the cost, we'll have to continue to deploy along the LAC. We cannot ever think of another forward deployment, another strategic surprise by China.
Absolutely. So we have to continue with that deployment irrespective of the cost for the reasons that you mentioned, General Bhatia. And these 4 Ds, I'm going to make a note of this. Defend, dominate, use deft diplomacy, and of course, deny space to China in the neighborhood. And that's in addition to the 3 Ds that we've always been talking about, whereas de-escalate, disengage, and then finally demilitarize. But you've given us 4 more Ds. But Nivriti, over to you. You've come back from the line of actual control a few weeks back. You were there in 2023 as well. Tell us the difference between the deployments in 2023 and in 2024. What is the difference that you saw in the span of 1 year along the LAC?
Okay, when I went there in 2023, we were there for a specific story, and what we saw was that an entire road along the line of actual control was being built, and it was just the beginning of that road. Right behind me on that mountain, on that slope, you can see Indian Army's observation post here, and on the other side of the mountain, those black mountains, and on the smaller hillocks over there, you can see a Chinese observation post. So it is that close to LAC. We could not see the formations also. But when I went there in 2024 in November, then we could see the entire black topped road already ready. 80% of it, 80% of it was complete, and in a month or two of the working season, they will be inaugurating the road. It is already working. And then if you talk about Neoma airfield, when I went there in 2023, there was nothing at all. And in the span of 6 to 7 months of working season, they have come up with an entire airfield on the LAC itself.
Yes, absolutely.
And then we were the only team who were there in 2023 when the foundation stone for the world's highest motorable road, Likaru Migla Fukche, was laid. And now we see that we could see the formations of the road, which were visible to you.
Of course.
So that is the pace with which
the infrastructure is being built over there. And you know, let me go over to the man who actually made all this happen, General Rajiv Chaudhary, who joins us now. General Chaudhary, welcome to the News9 Plus show. A happy Army Day to you as well. I must make a note of the fact that this is possibly the first time that we've heard the Chief of Army Staff repeatedly emphasize the role that the BRO has played in building border infrastructure, the officers and the men and the women of the BRO who've actually made all that infrastructure possible. But give us an idea of, given the present rate of massive infrastructure upgrades that you are conducting along the LAC, by when do you think India will have matched China's pace of infrastructure building along the LAC? Give us a year, give us a time frame in which we could actually match China on the LAC.
I will take it ahead, especially infrastructure, in consonance with the strategic big picture, what has been painted by General Vinod Bhatia. He knows everything. He has been DGM. And Nivriti has gone. In fact, she has been going again and again on ground from TV9, and she has seen everything, how it is coming up. I'll give you a little pointed response to what you have asked about the infrastructure. Infrastructure is the backbone of all the security metrics, how it leapfrog ahead. Earlier, maybe I'll take Galwan as the inflection point. Before that, the government was not giving, and infrastructure is the function of budget. Not adequate budget was being given for the infrastructure development all along the LAC, especially on the Chinese border. And thinking that this will remain a buffer zone, and we can, we should not be developing this strip all along the border because China may use it against us. That was the
mentality earlier on, and that was said by none other than the defense minister in Parliament.
That was stated by Mr. Anthony in the Parliament. But then the present government changed everything, and two major things what they did was, in 2015, they brought BRO under MOD. BRO was earlier placed under MORTH, and it was serving two masters. That was a very complicated arrangement. And the second thing what they did was, in 2018, they also permitted EPC mode of construction by BRO. BRO is an agency which basically used to do everything departmentally, their own resources, manpower and the machines. But then they also gave this permission to utilize EPC. So that became a major facilitator for infrastructure acceleration. And after Galwan, especially last 4 years, I'll give you some certain facts that we have been able to consume in last 4.5 years since June 2020. 52,000 crores
Right.
for all the work what we have done all along the borders, land
Yes.
borders,
Yes.
which was consumed, even less than that was consumed during last 9 years before Galwan. So
Right.
that will give you a major sense how it has been progressing very fast after Galwan. That is one.
Yes.
Rate of construction, since the budget is being given and a lot of other supports have also come in terms of equipment, machines, and earth moving plant
Yes.
uh, of uh, uh, of the their which is available in the market. The rate of construction of roads has gone by 2.5 times what
Right.
used to be earlier. The bridges, and we took a very major decision
Yes.
in 2021 that all our bridges hereafter will be class 70, because we must understand that on a road of class 9 configuration,
Yes.
everything can go on. But on a bridge of lesser classification, let's say class 40 or class 24, class 18, major tanks and maybe guns cannot move. So we made it a policy that all our bridges, anywhere we make any road of single lane or double lane
Yes.
of any classification, the bridges will be class 70. That was a major turning point in facilitating our armament, our equipment going ahead as far
Yes.
forward as possible, what we want to put it. And especially in Ladakh, if I speak about, Nivriti has seen and also
Yes.
mentioned about Umla, then Likaru Migla Fukche, then CDFD road. And Chumar sector, lot of development took place. And also in subsector north, we completed DSDPO, and we also developed the road from Sasoma, Sasirla, Sasir to Gakshu.
Yes. Yes.
So these are major things what have happened in last 4 years. And to tell you, approximately 28 to 29% of our budget is going in Ladakh, and equal
Right.
amount of budget is also going in Arunachal Pradesh.
Right.
And
Almost a
balance.
third of your budget is being spent in Ladakh alone. But, General, give us an idea by when you think that all of this will come
That,
to
that is
fruition
the
and
second
when will
part what
we.
you asked.
Yes.
If the fund flow continues like this, what we last 4 years, there has been increment of 160% budget
Yes.
since 2020 to 2024. So if the same rate goes on for next 5 years, and
Yes.
all other support which has been given to BRO, I
Right.
think we will be able to bridge that roadhead differential what we what
Yes.
we are suffering, in fact, previous to Galwan. That will be at parity. We will be at parity wherever. In fact, today on all the critical locations where we should be sitting, we are sitting on the LAC face to face with China. But
With.
then
Yes.
to make it even all along, it will take another 5 years if the same kind of budget and other supports are given to
So
BR.
2030 is the cutoff year, you think, that where India and China would actually come to, head to head with the Chinese infrastructure build along the LAC. And I want to bring in Colonel Apte. He's been listening very patiently to this. Colonel Apte, your entire service, you've seen Pakistan as the primary threat. You've been fighting on the Western Front. You've seen the counterinsurgency deployments as well. But now in the last 5 years, the entire Indian Army's orientation is shifting towards the northern frontiers. As General Bhatia mentioned, it's looking at Ladakh, it's looking at Sikkim, and of course Arunachal Pradesh. Do you have an idea by when all of our complete force alignments will start being ready to face the Chinese threat along all of these northern borders? It's been a while since we've actually woken up to this threat of the Chinese, but Galwan, as the General mentioned, General Rajiv mentioned, the fact that it was a wake-up call for us. When do you see all of our force postures altering in such a way that we are much more confident with the Chinese threat? That is a mixture of the infrastructure and the force posture.
Thanks, Sandeep, and wishing you all a very happy Army Day as well. Very interesting question, Sandeep. Timelines to be given on when the force posturing is complete is a easier ask, because the forces are already deployed. There was a realignment of forces from western borders to northern borders. We are aware that the entire focus of Indian military transition from being west centric towards being northern border centric. And since we were on the Ds, and your program also says deterring the dragon,
Yes.
I think the posture was also aligned from moving from dissuading China to deterring China.
Yes.
So all is falling in place. The general has brought out a relative timeline when the infra will come handy and come in place. As far as I know, the forces are already in place. We have a very robust defensive architecture all across the northern front. The terrain is very prohibitive on our side. It is relatively simpler on the other side. Having said that, the completion of defenses, the oldest line in the book is the defense preparation is never complete.
Yes.
You're always preparing for the worst, and you're always in process of improving your defenses. But what I would like to highlight here is the capability mismatch today is tremendous.
Yes.
And we're not looking at probably doing a man-to-man capability matching. A more prudent way would be infusing more technology, more
Yes.
high-end technology, giving technology in the hands of the forward battalions, the tactical troops, as you would call it, and giving them access to high-end technology, which kind of acts as a force multiplier,
Right.
and thereby reduces the overall capability mismatch between India and China.
Right.
So, in brief, our troops are in place, our formations are in place, the training is happening there, the war games are taking place, the postures are constantly being refined, and we are in a position to take on China. Having said that, the defense preparation is always a work in progress,
Right.
and this would continue along with the buildup of infrastructure as it goes up.
Absolutely. Defense preparation is always work in progress, but 2030 seems to be the agreed timeline, as General Rajiv mentioned, that we could actually hope for a huge parity with China, at least on infrastructure. But, General Bhatia, coming back to you, the Defense Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh, mentioned that 2025 is going to be the year of defense reforms. He clearly means that the theatre commands that have been long pending, this very critical reform of reorganizing the forces into theatres, is finally going to happen in 2025. How does India reform its forces and its force posture in the face of two adversaries like China and Pakistan? China, of course, being the primary threat. How do you reform when you actually have to keep a certain number of troops in the theatre, as the army chief mentioned? You can't even pull them back. Explain to us how complex this reform is going to be.
Sandeep, I think that is the key challenge today. The key challenge is we need to be present relevant, present effective, and future ready. And we cannot do without it. We need reforms, and it is a great thing that they said era reforms. Otherwise, the armed forces always keep transformation,
Yes.
and everyone else reforms. So now we're looking at reforms. We're looking at reforms in organization structures. We're looking at reforms in our manpower policy. We're looking at reforms in material, which is basically Atmanirbharta, and
Yes.
So there are a number of reforms which we are actually looking at. And if we do not get the roadmap right, if we do not get the transition management right, I think we will we'll have a problem there. So as we have recognized, the reforms which have to be carried out, and we need theaterization. To that, we should have no doubts about it. It's been 5 years since the Prime Minister said that theaterization should be there.
Yes.
And we slow and steady, and that's how it should be. And now the theatre is coming in. I think the key challenge for theaterization would be that we should look at reorbiting and not
Right.
redeployment.
Right.
There are different between reorbiting and redeployment. Location, no relocation, no redeployment, only reorbiting. And we get the command and control structures right. In that, I would like to give a suggestion on your platform. When you look at northern borders,
Yes.
we're looking at one theatre right now, the northern theatre.
Right.
See, there's no complementarity between the northwestern and northeastern. Let's say when I mentioned northwestern, the eastern Ladakh and the central sector,
Yes.
we got captured sectors. And if you look at the northeast, Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, and then we have third countries, which is Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh. And now with what's happening in Bangladesh, I visualize China, Pakistan, Bangladesh axis building up. Right.
Right.
So we need to make sure that we get it right. There's no harm going back to the drawing board and see what the requirements for tomorrow are. Look at the geopolitics, and we should understand that we are not looking at theaters the way the US looks at theaters,
Yes.
or the China. Number of problems actually.
Yes.
The major conflict flashpoints are all China related. whether it's India, whether it is Taiwan, whether it is South
Yes.
China Sea, Korea, Mekong. You see, we have to understand that.
Yes.
We as a nation, is territorial integrity and sovereignty is our aim. If that
Right.
is our aim, we should looking at theaters accordingly, and that is we need to synergize and we would optimize the resources, and that is, I think, what is going to happen. I'm very sure that's going to happen, and this is something which if we don't get it right, I think we ask more trouble. So be steady, be slow, but be sure.
Be steady, be slow, but be sure. That's the wisdom, collective wisdom from our experts on the News9 Plus show here today as we're discussing this very crisis kind of situation along the LAC with China. Despite the disengagement, China remains a threat for us in the near foreseeable future, and you just heard it from some of the best analysts in the business on what India needs to do. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today, and a happy Army Day to you again.